good evening and welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt. As you can see, it's a full screen and it's an absolute belter. Up top, you're not interested in him. That's my bearded brother, my right-hand man, Paddy Boy, as always. But as you'll see down below, there is a familiar face and a very welcome face from Celtic's history. Of course, one of the men that stopped the 10, it is none other than Jonathan Gould, ex-goalkeeper and all-round good guy. Walked away from Celtic with a couple of leagues, couple of cups under his belt. And we're here to rewind and go back through quite possibly one of the sweetest seasons ever. That's stopping the 10, which, remember, we got a double in. It's easy to forget that, but we'll go through it with Jonathan in his own words. As I say, it's good evening to you, but it's a good morning to you, Jonathan, at the other end of the world. Thank you for getting up bright and breezy to join us. How are you keeping, mate?
It's slightly warmer here, but not as hot as the temperature was last night at Hampden. It's a good day.
Absolutely. So, it's a great way to segue in there. Scotland, you were part of that last World Cup squad, of course, the last time that Scotland done it all those years ago. I'm still pretty much away and I'm 40-year-old, but I was a wee boy at the time and you were part of that squad. Obviously, we were talking to you before we came on. You were out doing your job, you were out training, and the game was 2 each when you left it. But talk me through it. There's a Celtic edge to it with the Tierney goal.
Yeah, I know. Well, there was a Celtic guess about the next one as well, wasn't it? When Big Schmeichel had it over his head. But no, it was incredible. And I had someone. I was doing my goalkeeping session with the two lads, Michael and Ollie, and I had a runner with his telephone on, making sure I knew what the scores were. And when I heard it was 4-2, I said, "What? They must have gone into extra time." Obviously, then realising there couldn't be extra time. Quite phenomenal outcome. And God, it would have been some night to have been there live, and obviously they've had a fantastic night. I don't think I'd have been going back to my club after that night. Would you?
No, definitely not, man. You says about Casper as a goalkeeper yourself, Jonathan. What do you think about his position in there? Obviously, he's wanting to put the ball up further. Is he at fault? Really, I know he's too far out, but I mean, should he be doing a little bit better?
He's probably waiting for the next set play to go in the other box. That's all right. He's probably thinking, I'm coming up for something here, because that was the next thing. That was the next phase of the game. Set play to Denmark. Kasper would have been up there. He's been up there before. I think he might have been one of those that scored. I'm not sure. I think he might have scored in his career somewhere.
I know his dad did. I think he might have as well down south. I'm not sure. His dad used to do it all the time, obviously.
Yeah, I think he has. So I think that's more what was on his mind. And the fourth goal was kind of irrelevant, but I think it just sealed it, and that was the moment for Limbs, wasn't it?
I was absolute scenes with season. I don't care. I'm going to be completely biased. The Kieran Tierney goal is the one that sent Scotland to the World Cup, right? It was done with then. I see what McLean's doing. He's got to take the shot, but he looked, for a guy who just came on, he looked bursting. It was, I'm just going to hit this. But a wee bit of the goalkeepers union there on supporting Kasper Schmeichel. It'll be interesting to see how his day back at training next time round is going to be, because I'm pretty sure he'll be getting it tight. Definitely for Kieran Tierney. I don't imagine Tierney scores too many goals like that in men training anyway, that's for sure.
It was an incredible strike. When you see it from behind the goal, I bet you there's a couple of the Danish boys just thinking, why didn't I stick my leg out? Even at the threat, there may have been a deflection, because two of them kind of swerved away. But it was a remarkable strike. And it's, when you think, what he's been through, and to leave the club, to go and have a fantastic career and then come back, it's what things, dreams are made of then for your country as well.
Yeah, well, we'll be looking forward to it. That's the thing. There's a draw coming up at the start of December. You just relax. But of course, as you know, as I say, you went over there, you got a draw. I'm going to say I hope it's not another Brazil type situation the time that the draw comes out this time.
Yeah. Well, I think you look at how many teams are in it now. I think it's going to be a little bit more even in respect of the groups. And I think you look at the squad that Scotland have. I genuinely think there's some big time players in there now that could take them out of the group stages.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of credit got to be given to Steve Clarke. I know at times that he gets a rough ride, but you can't argue with the tournament success there. He's done very, very well. And, I think that'll be his last. He'll go to this World Cup and he can hold his head held high. But yeah, I agree. good position for Scotland. There's a lot of good talents in there, and let's just suck it and see how it goes. But enough about Scotland. Let's get into the thicket. I've tried to go for a wee bit of a sort of 90s feel with the Johnny Collins and Phil O'Donnell, obviously a man that you'll have known and played for a time there around it. But yeah, let's get into business. We're here to talk about the Stop in the 10 season. The reason I wanted to do this is obviously when we got you on, we'd really appreciate you coming on, giving us your time. You know, it's your first season. It's a massive season, but I also see a lot of sort of parallels, maybe not with what's at stake, and obviously a 10 in a row, but where we find ourselves as Celtic at this moment in time, you know, there's going to be a new manager coming in at a sort of crucial point. Obviously, we're not trying to stop at 10, but Celtic are behind. Similarly as well, those points in this season we're going to talk about, where Hearts were at the top, and that's kind of funny because they are there right now. And I think when it gets to January, we're going to probably need to get a lot of players in. As you well know, I think there's about 9 or so players brought in during that key season. And to make it all gel and make it happen, yeah, I just wanted to do that. So if you're watching live on the YouTube, on X, at the end, I'm going to throw a couple of questions out to Jonathan. Get them up. We'll pick a couple of good ones and get himself involved in the content here. So let's get ourselves down to business. Jonathan, we'll start right back. We says, just with yourself signing at the start of August. You were at Bradford at the time. Am I right in saying that you were in the reserves? So when Celtic came calling, it's got to be a pretty big deal, eh?
Yeah, I got a phone call at home from an agent, Scottish agent. I won't actually mention him because he kind of stitched me up in a way. But the phone call then led to myself phoning my dad and saying, do you know anyone at Celtic? Because they do need a goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. And he spoke to Jock Brown. He knew Jock at the time. And so I went into work. I had one of those Sony Mars bars phones. You won't remember these guys, all right?
I do remember the massive brick in the back, the like huge battery, one of them.
Yeah. So I went to work with that. The manager, Chris Kamara, wasn't actually there. The first team had gone on a night out in Blackpool. I hadn't been invited to that one. And so I was out warming up with the youth team, basically. And I was taking the warm-up. And I'd said to Chris Hutchins, who was the youth team coach, I said, I need to take my phone with me. I've got an important call potentially coming through. And he sort of frowned at me. He said, you can't take a mobile out into the training session. I said, oh, well, I'm going to. I need to. I didn't tell him why, obviously. And then the phone went. And my dad said, look, I think we've done a deal with Jock. You need to speak to him. So I then spoke to Jock, and he asked me one question. He said, do you think you could handle an Old Firm game? And I said, well, I've played in the Premier League, Jock. I said, I've played in, big derbies, not as big as this one, but I think I can handle myself. And he said, right, that'll do for me. He said, get yourself up, drive up. And we didn't really talk about the money. It was more an amazing offer. I'd spoken to Scarborough Town's manager 2 days before that and told him I was available on a free, and he knocked me back. How good's that?
It's sliding doors moment. I mean, no disrespect to the rest of the clubs, but I'm pretty sure you preferred Celtic to Scarborough. It works out that way.
Crazy. And so I went. I got in the car. I flew down to the Bradford ground, and I had to find Chris Kamara because he said he'd promised me a free. And fortunately, he was walking through the car park. I said, I need a chat with you, Cammy, because I'm a bit busy. I said, no, Cammy, I need to chat with you. So I went in his office. I said, right, does that offer of a free transfer still stand? He goes, yeah. If you got yourself a club, you can go. I said, right, okay. I need it done basically today. We need it done by 5 o'clock today, this move. He said, well, why is the urgency? I said, well, this team play in Europe in the next couple of weeks. I said, I've got to be signed before the European deadline. And he kind of looked at me and he went, well, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Celtic. And honestly, you should have seen his face drop, Cammy, at the time. And he said, you what? I said, I'm going to Celtic. I says, you promised me. He said, I've got to go and tell the chairman that I've just given you a free transfer to Celtic. I said, yeah, that's what you're going to do. And to be fair to Cammy, he went and got it organised. I got in my little Fiat Punto and drove 3.5 hours up to Parkhead. I couldn't quite believe it at the time. You still think someone's going to... Yeah. And walked in the ground. I've still got my contractor's badge. At the time, they used to give you little contractor's badges saying why you were in the stadium. That was a form of security. So walked in, met Vim and Murdo and Jock and signed, and Job done.
Well, and that's it. Were you waiting on some? Were you waiting on it to be some sort of joke, a Stalybridge Celtic, or some sort of Jeremy Beadle-esque situation?
Yeah. Well, that is the story about Stalybridge Celtic. I rang my mate up on the way up on my Sony Marsbar again, and said, "Oh, I've signed for Celtic. Great move for me." And my mate actually did say, he said, "Come on, Gould." He said, "Stalybridge Celtic. It's not that big a club."
Wow.
Well, it's I'm always fascinated at how these sort of deals work out, because we know now, obviously in modern football, it's all agents and even entourages and all that kind of garbage, and it seems really convoluted. Of course, there was a freedom of movement where we didn't have the windows and stuff as well. But yeah, getting yourself in, it's a big massive deal, I can imagine. And obviously, as we say, starting is something new. So you come in, and I think at the start you're one of the sort of a large group. I think we get Burley from Chelsea, Jackson comes in for Hibs, and then I think it was Mahi, Rennes, Blinker, and rounding it off, I've got Henrik Larsson. How can I forget Henrik Larsson? That guy, whatever happened to him? But when you come in, and obviously you said you had a couple of conversations, was the first time you sat down and spoke with Wim Jansen and Murdo McLeod? Was it upon arrival? Was there anything beforehand?
No, nothing. It was Jock that had done the deal. So that was me walking in. I knew Murdo because I'd been involved in the Scotland squad back in 1993, I think it was, when I was playing for Coventry. So, he knew of me. And I think it was the fact that I was Scottish and I was eligible then to play in Europe. I think that was sort of part of it, really.
So see, whenever we talk about signings now, there's a lot of moaning about what we'd call club signings, club making decisions then, right? So were you a prototype club signing? Were you one of the first club signings, if you want to call it that then?
I think I was probably a club recommendation, wasn't I? but ultimately, I think that's where Wim sort of lent on Murdo a lot. Murdo knew the scene. He also knew obviously what it takes to win stuff in a Celtic jersey, and so based on that, it was probably Murdo's influence was as big as anybody's.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On that as well, I mean, we have had Murdo on for a chat, and I've been lucky enough to go for lunch with him. He's still very, very involved. He still really enjoys the football, and he's obviously like a very, very educated man. I was talking to him about Champions League games and stuff, and he seems very, very knowledgeable. And even talking about the Celtic team just now, and he's starting to talk. He's telling me about tactics that he thinks the managers got wrong and things like that. Was he quite hands on? Was he quite?
Yeah, he was, and because of his history, I think there was a huge amount of respect that came from the players, and I think that helped, bridge the gap, not gap, but just bridge that relationship thing for Wim, because Wim didn't really know many of us. He probably knew of us. Clearly knew Paul Lambert and the likes of that, and obviously knew Henrique and Reggie and a couple of the other signings because of where they came from. But it probably helped it massively having that experience in and around Wim. But Wim was very, very single-minded himself, and he was making the decisions.
So obviously we're talking, as I said there at the top of the show, massive incomings, new manager, kind of pulled out of nowhere, to be honest with you, because I remember that time there was a lot of names that were going round. Everybody from Cruyff to Bobby Robson was going to be the new Celtic manager, and it's Wim Jansen, and it's sort of out of the blue. Don't expect, of course, we're not complaining how that turned out, but all change, trying to knit together a completely new squad. There was some outgoings, there was quite a lot of these coming in, and of course, what did the sort of pre-season for that look? Obviously, you're coming into a club, it's a massive club, you get sold that, can you handle that? But with the backdrop of what this season was going to stand for, was that something that was put onto you by the likes of Jock Brown, particularly maybe, Murdo McLeod in pre-season, that this is, you have to win this one, there's no option to lose here?
Yeah, no, I joined when pre-season was practically done.
It was like 2nd August or 3rd August or something, eh?
Yeah, really late. So we were kind of, I think, I know, obviously, that next game within 3 or 4 days was Roma. We played Roma in a friendly, and so I was just chucked into that. I'd obviously already done my pre-season at Bradford, so I was relatively fit and came in quite sharp. I had Pete Latchford, who was the goalkeeping coach. He worked with us solidly and me specifically for that first week, probably just to get a gauge as to how he saw me as a goalkeeper, and so he probably played a big part in my my availability because I was ready, and also saw something in me that he could recommend to Wim that, you know, once I played that Roma game, I was ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we start the season, as you well know. It says, I believe you're on the bench the first two games, the game against Hibs, the game against St Johnstone. There've been Gordon Marshall on time. Now, I'm not going to speak out of school here. I know he's an ex-colleague of yours, but I will say that, and this isn't lip service, I think that when you came in from being a sort of young Celtic fan, you know, I remember I'm 40 years of age, so at the sort of time, a good sort of understanding, but we were always troubled with goalkeeping. And I think that as soon as you came in, you were sort of beginning of us getting more used to having a good and dependable goalkeeper. So that's I want to thank you firstly for that. But in that opening game, of course, it doesn't kick off too well. There's the infamous Chick Charnley goal. It's a stray pass for Henrik Larsson. And then the next game, we go into that game and it's a loss to Dunfermline, who'll become quite significant near the end of the season, as we well know. Obviously, is it true that after the Hibs loss, the guys had a wee chat with Murdo and Wim where you weren't too happy about how the style of play, it was maybe a wee bit too direct, and you tried to recalibrate for the St Johnstone game, mixed it up, and then that fell flat. Is that true? Is that an accurate story?
Yeah, I think there were conversations that were had in the dressing room, and then Wim, I can remember him coming in, and in those days, you know, the technology was quite different. It was a whiteboard. And I think some of the lads, you know, I was probably not as vocal at that time being so early in, but some of the lads kind of expressed how they felt. I know Stubbsy was quite a big part of that, and, you know, the role that he had as a sweeper and a ball player, you know, that was, you know, it was obvious we had to try and express our thoughts. But I can tell you now, when we came out of that meeting, I'm pretty sure Wim still had his way of playing.
Yeah,
I think somehow he twisted it, and he used to go like this quite a lot. I think he twisted it, but the fact that he'd allowed us to express ourselves, I think that helped the relationship as well. So it became a two-way thing. You could see that there was an empathy. And you got to remember, you know, when Wim played in 2 big World Cups, and his tactical knowledge and the position that he played, you know, and that Dutch team was pretty amazing with some fantastic footballers. So like we said, there was a respect that was born out of that meeting. And then, yeah, the Dunfermline game then put a huge amount of pressure on us going into St Johnstone, because I think it would have been one of the worst starts in a long, long time for the football club.
Yeah, I think you're right. But if my main serves correct, at the time, if we had lost that, it would have been one of our poorest starts to a season in God knows how many years. But as you said, getting into that St Johnstone, and the thing I like about this when we go through this season, because of the old format of the season, the start of the season pretty much mirrors the end of the season. It's almost just, you know, you play the games in that order, almost identical. So it's brilliant. And as we well know, when we get to the end of the joy story, St Johnstone. But for St Johnstone and for obviously yourselves and Henrik Larsson, we can only talk about this, can't we? Because in that third game, in that massive game, as we say, is where we were really, you know, sad start to this season. Things are looking tough. You know, you're desperately scrambling. There's no margin for error, as we well know. You know, 6 points can seem deadly in the current climate of football. Yeah. But back then, particularly when we are chasing the momentum, the money with Rangers, it's a big worry. But of course, as you rightly say, we get on the end of it. There's a brilliant goal as well that gets unsung in that game, which is obviously the Darren Jackson one. Bangs it in the top bin. But then we've also got Henrik Larsson's famous diving header. And that becomes something about a trademark with Henrik. But did you feel, because you were in for that game, and you have an amazing save early on in that game, by the way. Is that one it's just reactionary? Because I think it comes in the boy at the back post and he smashes it at you from almost, 2-3 yards out, and you get the hand up to it. Sliding doors again, because if that goes in on our current form, the heads maybe go down. Yeah,
a lot of the lads, you know, remember that save. It probably was a massive moment personally, but more importantly, it was a big moment for the team at 0-0. It was George O'Boyle who came back. He hit an absolute unbelievable volley. Probably caught it too well. If he'd have bobbled it, it would have gone in. And managed to get the hand on it. And I you know, and as you said, we then scored 2 great goals, and that was really the start for us. That gave us a little bit of momentum and a little bit belief as a team. And I can remember the flying header from Henrik now, you know, with his dreadlocks and all, and it was
it's funny because it shows you how times change and how expectations change. Because I remember at that time, I think it was, I want to say it was through the Celtic View, where they had a framed and signed print of that header that they gave away that you could enter a competition to win. Like, it was almost as if that was like a trophy winning moment, right? That shows you how far the standards and expectations have came down. But no, it's definitely a turning point. It kicks us on. I think we go on. That's one of the first to like an 8-game run or something. Does that sound about right? So
Yeah,
massive.
we did it did start something for us as a whole group, and because it was quite a new dressing room, but we needed a bit of strength through some kind of success, and that game gave us that.
Yeah, definitely.
See in that squad, Jonathan, obviously there was a lot of players coming in, and obviously you said that Murdo helped kind of gel these together a little bit, but what other kind of coaching did you have? Obviously you'd have been working alongside the goalkeeping coach and whatever, but did you have like set piece coaches in there? Did you have anyone kind of behind the scenes that was actually doing anything else in there?
No, it was so basic when you think about it at the time. It was really Murdo, Wim, and Latch.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, come back to set places, and we had some big boys capable of winning headers. You had Mark Reaper in that group, who was a threat, but we had delivery as well. We had Simon Donnelly could put a ball on a sixpence. He was decent at putting the ball in there, and I think if you still look at set plays now, it all depends on who's putting the ball in there. And later on in that period of time that I was there, we had Lubo Moravcik. Well, there weren't many better than him, but I think when it comes to the coaching, Vim was a smart guy, and he used to put sessions on where we probably didn't realise that he had an outcome. I can remember we used to train on Celtic Park at the day before our home games, especially when we were playing teams that we thought we were going to have a lot of the ball. He would play 11 against 8. So the first team would play against 8 players because he knew we were going to have the ball and there would be space in the pitch. There'd be other times when we go away from home, he'd tighten the pitches right in. If we were going away to a Dunfermline, it was going to be, we were going to get kicked and we were going to get pushed and pulled everywhere. He'd make the spaces very, very tight. And he'd always have this one where he'd be the worst referee you've ever had in a training session.
So he's watched Scottish football then, aye?
He may have done, but he also knew that, referees generally were going to make it hard for us, and we were going to have to accept certain things. So there's some very subtle ways of coaching us.
I like that. That's interesting to hear, particularly the narrowing of the pitches, because we now live in a lot of managers now, and obviously for yourself being involved in coaching, I don't know if that's you take these sort of things away from managers you worked with and say I like that and adopt it, but managers I feel now in the modern age are so stuck in their ways where it's we will just play our game and everything will fall into place. That idea of you're going to be in a tight park, you're going to maybe have guys sitting in, change the way you train for the game, horses for courses. I really like that. That's quite an interesting bit of insight there. But how was Wim? Because he seems like quite a quiet and unassuming guy. Obviously, how was he for a sort of man management point? Because again, I'm just going off what I've heard, and you'll be able to confirm. How was he with the sort of man management? Because you had the two factions, didn't you? The sort of British type of guys that's an idea, a night out in a celebration was a wee bit sort of maybe down the boozer. But then, am I right in saying that you mentioned Reaper, brilliant defender, by the way? I think he massively strengthened that back line, something else. One of the massively phenomenal players that I think people forget about, and I'll throw in a Joshua Harn later down the line into that as well. Is it true that there was these wee Scandinavian knees-ups between the Scandinavian players? I think, was it round at Reaper's house? Was he the man that was responsible for all that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we didn't find out probably about 6 or 7 weeks into this group forming that on Sunday afternoons that we called them the Schmoggle Boggle, right? And we found out that they were all going around, Morten Weghorst, obviously Henke and Reggie and Harold Bratpack, another one out of the group. And they'd go around and they'd spend the afternoon drinking peach schnapps on a Sunday. And we wondered why they come in on a Monday just slightly bleary-eyed, and we didn't get invited. Some of us didn't get invited because we didn't know about it. So we actually made a point of going. I remember going round to Mark's house, and we had a proper skinful one Sunday afternoon just to make them realise that we're all part of it together. And Scotland's probably one of the easiest places that you can be accepted that you go out and have a drink. It's
afternoon drinking on a Sunday, all good.
I love it. Could you imagine the players nowadays doing that? Could you imagine like Daisen Maeda, Rio Hatati and stuff having like a kind of Japanese party on a Sunday afternoon and
they drink,
turning up for training.
I work with an amazing Japanese player called Hiroki Sakai here. He's quite phenomenal, but great person and top player. And I would think it would be quite difficult to get those guys, the guys that you're talking about, out to the level that we went at. I think professionalism's changed. Having said that, I think I'll talk about that group of the Scandinavians. They kind of also brought another element of professionalism in, even though we're talking about their little Sunday afternoon get-togethers. They were, I think Morten Vikhorst, as an example, one of the best pros I've seen within a football club. The way he looked after himself.
I mean, see, you're saying that the sort of Scandinavian, I joke, the Scandinavian thing, and obviously you intertwined. Obviously, harmony in the dressing room. I'm not saying that would have been a problem, but did initially these things at first, did it create wee cliques, and was it difficult? Because we were obviously on a good point of this. We're going through a good run of wins. We're doing quite well on that. But was it hard with that adjustment to say, look, we're all the one team here, we're all pulling the same direction? Was there ever any sort of like divides, if you will?
No, I can't. And I think that was the beauty of it. I can't remember that being ever the case. In fact, I actually think Scandinavians into the British game were a good mix because they're very, very blunt. They're very honest themselves, and we had a group of Scottish and British players in there that were of the same ilk. We weren't going to take a step backwards, and so because of that, the dressing room was very, very honest. So if you weren't performing on a daily basis, or you weren't performing in a game, you got told. I remember the worst shouts I was ever given in a game of football was Mark Reaper, and I think we were playing against Dundee United, and Kjell Olofsson was he banged a few goals in that season, and Mark Reaper turned around to me, and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I'll just
we're an adult.
He basically goes, for fuck's sake, Gould, he said, they've had one fucking shot and scored 2 fucking goals, he said. And that was the reality of what we got.
There's one thing I want to ask. I'm almost certain that you would have been here for there. There was, speaking of crosswords, and there was an infamous bust up with Tosh McKinley and Henrik Larsson. Were you privy to that?
I think everyone at the training ground was privy to that, including a load of supporters.
It's maybe talking out of school. Are you able to tell us exactly here? Because these are these sort of things that you hear a version of it and it grows up.
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago, and my memory's not like what it used to be. But I can just remember it getting a little bit feisty in a small-sided game, where Tosh was all over Henrik. Henrik reacted, then Tosh obviously stuck a nut on him, basically. And it was quite a surreal moment. And there were supporters there watching, so that you said, nowadays your training grounds, no one can get in, and you would not see that sort of thing. But at Barrowfield, down the one side, anybody could come and watch us, which is probably a nice thing anyway for supporters to be able to come and do. But that's the story was straight out. I think they tried to keep a lid on it, but there was no way that was going to happen. I think Tosh, looking back, would probably go, I shouldn't have done that. As it was, it happened. There was nothing post that. It was put to bed, and obviously Tosh played quite a few games for us that season as well. And Henrik he's a big man. He'd probably been caught up in those sorts of things at football clubs before, but it was a kind of moment.
Well, a bit crazy. You speak about the Scandinavians coming in as well, Jonathan. I think the reason that they managed to adapt so well to the Scottish game as well is because they were probably used to the shit weather that we've got to deal with. where was the kind of hardest place that you found travelling to? We kind of make a joke about players coming in, and we say, yeah, they can play in the Premier League, they can play in the Spanish leagues and stuff, but can they play in a freezing cold Friday night in Ross County up at Dingwall? Do you know what I mean? Like, where was the worst place you went to as a player?
Aberdeen was freezing, absolutely freezing. You'd go up there, and as a goal, if I didn't have, to be fair, I used to have quite a lot to do at Aberdeen. Sometimes I get really cold at Hearts, and then the one time I do remember, and I think it was in Europe, and I'm pretty sure we went back to Rosenborg with Harold Bratpack, and I think it was -5 or -6 on match night. Even though it was just ridiculous. So I used to sometimes come in with chilblains after training. Barrowfield was never the nicest place either, and you're standing there in the shower and you can feel your feet trying to come back. But it was quite different in Scotland with the weather.
Well, obviously you mentioned a few guys, and the beauty thing about the way that the seasons work, we could bring in anybody. So on top of those guys you obviously mentioned, we bring in Reaper, and of course we bring in Paul Lambert, who's coming as a Champions League winner, straight in the squad, massive talent, total transparency. My favourite player from that era, growing up, Paul Lambert was my man. He comes in. And see, do you as a squad, when you're getting these quality, because you look at the guys we were signing, and you include Bratback and stuff, and it's really changed times, because these guys are all internationals. These are all guys that are coming in that are, playing for their country weekend, month in, every games that's going to be happening, internationals are called up. When someone like Lambert comes in with the Champions League, do you, even though he's probably on an age level with you guys and that, does that make you sort of stand up and go, wow, Champions League winner, this is going to improve us? And does it maybe does it lift the confidence when you get a guy like him coming in the squad?
Yeah, what it does, it brings a presence to the group. When you've got someone like Paul, who's, like you said, has just gone and won a Champions League, and it kind of, it's a statement of intent as well from the people, that run the football club, that we're going to bring the best players we possibly can in. Craig Burley.
Can you go on the phone to them and tell them that now, by the way? Do you mind giving them a wee phone call? Tell them that.
Well, if they want me to come and sit on the board and help them with recruitment and stuff like that, I'd happily.
Definitely, Jonathan. Listen, we will promote this as much as we can. We will get you on there, mate. We're needing somebody with a football in mind in that boardroom. I'll tell you, Jesus.
Well, give me a call. It's all good. I think every time you bring a player in, it has to improve the team. And I look at Paul, and I can see Paul in my head now. He'll be chasing someone down in the right back spot, and then he'll be harrying somebody in their left back spot, and then he's turning up on the edge of the box and firing it into the top bin, to win the game.
A lot of Vaseline on his head.
Across his eyes. He just it is a funny one as well, Paul, because we had quite a decent weights program, and we were kind of at the start of the change in how footballers looked after themselves. Like a guy called Jim Henry was absolute brilliant strength and conditioning coach, but Paul always refused to go in the weights. He went, no, I never used to do any weights in Germany. I won a European Cup. He was never seen there,
That's a get out. That's a good get out.
Yeah, I think. We also had, it was funny because before we'd had a new gym built up in the main stand, we had this poxy little gym that was next door to John Clark's kit room and Angie's washing room. And I think we only had like a Smith machine in there and a couple of sets of weights, but we had a little group, and the group was, you had to be able to bench press 100 kilos on the Smith machine, right? But then you also had to try and get to 100 on 40 kilos non-stop. So every 2 or 3 days, the boys, they're really competitive. We had about 7 or 8 that managed to get into the 100 kilos, which is a decent lift, even on the Smith machine, get a bit of help. But we had Morton Vekhorst, and he'd be pumping out 140 straight reps on 40 odd kilos on the Smith machine, right? And he'd set us all to shame. So it was very, very competitive within the group. And because it was tight knit and the areas were tight knit, and like you said, we used to go in and if we hadn't done well, John Clark would give us a bit of a dig the next, even though he wasn't part of the management. You talk about that group of management, you're going to take a bit of honesty from John Clark, given he's a Lisbon Lion. But he always used to come in, Jimmy Johnson, they used to give it to us if we didn't play it well at the weekends. Yeah, and then even Ange, God rest her soul, she used to give it to us as well. So there was no hiding place.
Like that, I like that. I like that all the way through it. But so let's jump back. I love this. We're going to do these wee rabbit holes. We'll jump back into some of the action because obviously, if we say we've built up to speed, we're on a wee bit of a run. But then the big one, the question that you were asked, can you handle, as it was, of course, then an old firm, we call it a Glasgow derby these days, not through any fault of our own, somebody else's fault, but first one of the season, and it's
call it that. All right,
it's a 1-0 loss at Ibrox.
Yeah.
And as I recall, there was a bit of this going on. There was a wee bit of premature sort of taunting for the Rangers players in that game. And then immediately after that, bottom of the league, Motherwell does 2-0. So that's two massive blows, when we're in a dogfight for the title. In terms of the first game at Ibrox, obviously we'll get on to your debut, Old Firm as it were, at Celtic Park, but what was that 2-game period like for us? A massive loss to Rangers, they're taunting us, and then we fall flat on our face against the team bottom of the league. Did that ever early on sort of shake the confidence as it was?
It probably did at the time, but I think it gave us a little bit of motivation as well, because obviously I think it was Goffey, wasn't it, with his hands, and the way he sort of reacted to that galvanised us a little bit. Like you said, we were strong characters. I remember you've got to remember their team as well. They had Gascoigne, I think Laudrup. They had an entourage of top players that year. Gorham, Andy was still in unbelievable form. They were top players. So to go there and probably come away 1-0 wasn't the worst. Like you said, the Motherwell one, I think Johnny I think it was at home, wasn't it? I've got a feeling Johnny Spencer scored in that one, so he obviously had a bit of motivation around that himself. But that was a poor result. But we got ourselves, I can't remember how it unfolded after that, but we must have bought ourselves around. It probably was the League Cup then that you're going to mention that kind of changed our season.
Yeah, definitely.
Who was the one person in that squad, Jonathan, that could grab the game by the scruff of the neck if you were on a bit of a downer? Who was the one person that would actually say, right, lads, come on, and get you together to kind of galvanise you?
Probably Craig Burley. And I think he was player of the year that season. He was certainly mine. He could get on the ball and dominate the game. And that was helped when Paul came in, because Paul could do a lot of the dog work behind him and he could still play, but it enabled Craig to get forward, and I think his goal contribution was pretty high that season. And he also had a really good little relationship, a give and go relationship with Simon Donnelly, and also with Henrique. There was some really good link play with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for Craig Burley in the comments, and as you say, he scores a lot of fantastic goals. You mentioned the cup final, which of course was at Ibrox, so that must have, there we go. That's a great younger Johnny, young girl.
You've not changed, honestly.
I like about this photo as well. Look at the authority figure behind you. Absolutely gutted that Celtic have won a cup. Nothing changes, so I like that. But yeah, that game, as I say, I think great to get the first silverware. It's a 3-0 against Dundee United. Big Reaper, gets us in there. We get a Larson deflection, and Burley wraps up 3-0.
Yeah.
In terms of building confidence and thinking, we've got the first trophy in the bag of the season, that must have done absolute wonders for the confidence of the squad and bring you together. But maybe it was nice winning at Ibrox a wee bit as well to maybe rub it in.
Yeah, I know they'd taken all the pictures down at the time at the stadium, because I think we'd got the home dressing room. I'm not sure, can't remember now. But it was. We'd actually gone to Ibrox in the semi-final as well and beat Dunfermline there.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an easy game. I think I remember making one of my favourite saves that I made. It was against Hamish French. It was going down the bottom right-hand corner. Managed to just get my hand on it. But then I think the other thing was we didn't concede a goal in the whole of that tournament. And I think that helped us as a back four. You could see that we'd started sort of forging those relationships. The communication between us all was developing. And I think, the fact that we hadn't conceded, and we then became quite a miserly team throughout the rest of that season. Like you said, and we had some, you forget Enrico Annoni. Every time he came into that team, my goodness me, you know, he was a stopper. Our fullbacks were good players. Stefan now and then used to lose himself a little bit, but
A little
that was just a mad friendship with him.
Who was more nuts? Anoni or Mahi? If we're talking,
Stefan could just go just like that. Enrico and Anoni he was a little bit more measured, but if I was going to get in a ring and either one of them was going to lose their temper, Anoni was going to probably bop you for good. I don't think I'd taken anything from Stefan, to be honest.
I think Stefan's a bit of a sort of scrappy do type character, isn't he? A wiry, angry guy.
He looks crazy. Enrico Anoni, I actually follow him on Instagram as well, and
Yeah,
I think he's a biker just now, isn't he? He's getting about on his bike all the time. He's right into his motorbiking.
Yeah, I think he's into paddle or pickleball or something like that as well now. Yeah.
Oh, he's off his head. Absolute icon. Absolutely off him, man. That's
absolutely. But yeah, we went for there. There's a couple of guys. Anoni, big long throw. I always remember that as well. But we had a good team, and I think that really that would have the cup win. As you say, is the run we went on, winning it in such comfortable style, definitely breeds confidence. And of course, that'll take us back into dealing with Rangers, because the first game at Celtic Park is a one each. But off the back of that, you know, we go down early. I think it's Negri scores the goal, and then Big Stubbsy pops up and bangs on one, and there we go. There's a celebration for the big man there. It's a huge moment for us. Obviously, we're in the title fight. You want to be winning the game, but in terms of being so close, 1-0 in the last game, being 1-0 down, but then bringing it back for the brink, getting the draw at home again. What's the effects of that on the dressing room?
Yeah, what I can remember from that one is I think Andy Gorham was in unbelievable form that night. I think we probably should have won the game. I think, Negri did me at a near post. People have said it's near post. When I look back on it, I thought it was a good strike. But
it's deceptively quick, by the way. He snaps it in.
I probably got caught by his quick back lift. But I think Andy had a fabulous game. I remember another one he pulled out at the top bin, and one-on-one, he had a couple of those. But like you say, the late, it was relatively late goal, Big Stubbsy. It was a massive result. I think the other thing we just should mention, we had a nice little run in Europe as well, where we played Liverpool at home and drew 2-2. Probably should have won that game. Then went to Liverpool and drew 0-0 and nearly came away with something. And I think so. Those little moments,
wasn't it the Donners? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think those little moments, to go to Liverpool and not get beat by them on both occasions, that also helped us build a bit of resilience and that belief. But there's no doubt the 1-1 and the late goal was massive for us.
So after that sort of period, we then I want to wind back actually, because I meant to bring this up. We spoke earlier on about the sort of habits and celebration habits. Obviously, you won the cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is you've got a wee bit of time to celebrate that. And Wim Jansen maybe didn't quite understand the way that he's intended to celebrate it. Yeah. In other words, I think he says, "Oh, that's great. Go and enjoy yourselves. You'll be taking your wives." Is that correct?
Yeah. That was. I think what happened was we kind of needed a blowout every now and then, and that was how we built some of our team spirit as well. And I remember us. I think we were playing Hibs away, and I went to Vim and said, "Right, we're going to play Hibs away. Then we're going to get on a plane and we're going to go to Dublin that same night." So there was a lot of pressure on us. We kind of put our own pressure on, because you got to win if you're then going to get on a plane, because you'll probably be going back with your supporters anyway. that same night. And he did. He said, "Oh yeah, you go and have a couple of days off. You take your family." And go, "No, I'm not taking the family. Then we're going to go and have a blowout." And he says, "What do you mean blowout?" He goes, "We're going to have a few drinks." And then he said, "Okay, you come back training on Monday." I said, "Well, we're going on Saturday night. We're going to be on a bender Saturday all day Sunday, and then we're going to get the plane back Monday morning." And he goes, "You train?" And I went, "Well, I don't think that's a good idea of him, to be honest." I can remember us getting back in Monday morning. We got the early flight, 6 o'clock in the morning, getting into straight into training.
Oh man!
And he took one look at us during training. I don't think Jackie McNamara was in the best state, and he just told us to go home. And we did warn him. We warned him.
Admitted. So again, not as to get anybody in trouble. I'll pass it now. But so who was? If you're everybody gets a night out with their pals, right? And there's always that one guy that's just a machine and just packs it away. And there's also that other one that just is a wee bit noisy. Who are these social characters?
That was how amazing this group was. We were noise, and we enjoyed each other's company. It was such a good group. And you know, we're all scattered around all over the place now. But I think if you got us back in the room, and hopefully if we get that 30-year anniversary, and most of us are still here to see it, you know, if you were in that room, you'd see the bond, and that was born out of those relationships, those times that we had together.
Yeah. Well, as we're moving back and as we're nearly getting through the main points of the season, there's another big signing. We mentioned them. It's Harold Bratback, because he gets brought in.
Yeah.
He comes in December, and you look at his record, scoring the Champions League, and you know, domestically comes in with a phenomenal record. Again, international. I just want to know, because he's a player that's maybe misunderstood among Celtic supporters. How good that actually was he? Because he was very much, he struggled, I think, to sort of produce that same form. Maybe it was the pressures of Celtic, maybe it was the service. Maybe I'm going to give him a wee bit of sort of support there and say maybe it's the service. I doubt that, but you know what I mean. He wasn't the same guy that came over to us that we'd signed. What was he like in training, and how would you say Harold was as a footballer? Because I never felt we saw the best out of him. He gave us some great goals and some key moments, but I never felt that we got what we thought we'd signed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder if you spoke to H now, how he'd see it. Because I wonder if he came in and he was, you know, it's quite a big signing at the time. I think he would have probably had a number of clubs chasing him, given his goal scoring record and what he'd done at his previous club. But you know, to come from where he was to even from Norway at the time to us, it was that, you know, huge club, and certain pressures around that, and I think he wasn't what I would say he wasn't the truest finisher I've ever sort of kept goal against. There was, and he'd have 2 or 3 days where you could see his confidence had gone. But I still remember him. I think he scored 3 or 4 in one game, and we all went, "Here he is. That's Harold." And then when you look at the goal, yeah, that's right. And he was top notch, and it was his pace. What you've got to remember is we had sort of players like Henrik were different kinds of players that were links. I think Harold would have probably benefited more from what you'd call a traditional old big centre forward that would have held the ball off, and then it was a second phase run from Harold from a midfield through ball.
Kind of John Hartson type player.
Yeah, probably because of his pace. But what I would say is he was a top person, and he, with even when things weren't going right, he was very, very positive in the group. And the other thing was, as you talk about dealing with pressure, he must have been able to, because he flies airplanes now. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I heard that as well. Yeah. You speak about guys like that, and guys coming in, Jonathan. Was there anybody that you felt? We're talking now. Obviously, we're looking at bringing in another manager, and I'm saying we need a manager who's able to shoulder the expectation. Now, coming up to Celtic, were you aware of it? And do you feel that there's other players who haven't managed it? Is that expectation to win every single week?
I don't think you realise that until you actually leave a football club like Celtic. That expectation, you kind of, you know, I was there for 6 years, and you kind of live that expectation for 6 years, and it becomes quite claustrophobic in the end. And but then you leave, and then you go to, and I went to Preston, and you know, it was a really good football club in respect of history and all that sort of stuff, but down in Britain, or in England, you're not expected to win week in, week out unless you're with one of the big Premier League clubs. And I found that very, very hard as a person to accept that, okay, we've won 2 games, it's all right to lose the third, because I wasn't used to that at Celtic. Now, if you're not really prepared for that microscopic view on your game and to handle the pressure of supporters, media, media's changed massively, social media nowadays, then you're going to have a problem coming up to a club like Celtic. I mean, I can remember, this is taking you back again, Steve, you might not remember this, but when I was playing, we had chat rooms on computers. And for some reason, we used to go into these chat rooms, or I did, and it'd be a Celtic chat room, and it'd be after a game where we'd probably not done as well as we should. You're getting hammered in a chat room. Now, I personally believe, and it's advice I give to players now, you've got a choice as to whether you want to engage with that social media. And if you're on Twitter, you're open to scrutiny. If you're on Facebook and Insta, probably some of them a lot less, but the pressure now is far more intense than it was then, in a different way. Then it was really about walking down the street and having to face up with a Rangers supporter when you're there beating you, or even a Celtic supporter when you've been beaten. We knew that after a loss, very unlikely that you should be going out. To be honest, you had to take that pill and stay in your house for a couple of days.
So your weekends were cut short if you didn't win. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I can remember a couple of our huddle ones where we'd already sort of planned our night out, and the shout was, lads, if we don't fucking win tonight, we won't be going out. And that was our mission.
I like that. Playing for the fans, playing for the boys, but also playing for the night out.
Playing for the baby. I like it. Yeah.
Someone reassuring about how basic that is. I like that.
Yeah.
But we walked through, which mentioned a couple of guys. Bratback comes in about December. That takes us right into a good point then, because of course we get the big stone off our neck. It's the New Year's game, 2-0. It's Burley again. It's Lambert. I think this is probably, for me, as my recollections, this is when Lambert starts to find his groove a wee bit. He's about a sort of first half of the season. He's kind of toiling. We're not seeing the best Paul Lambert, but he starts to pick up, and that's a massive game for that as well. It's, a massive victory. And I remember sitting watching that New Year's game with my dad and his mate and going absolutely fucking bananas when that second one hits the net. It's typical Paul Lambert. He didn't score Snyder goals. He scores an absolute belter. But 2-0, it drags us right back into the race. It's nip and tuck at this point. So we said Hearts are still there as well. That's got to be the ultimate, because we said that's the thing. The games come quite thick and fast, and we almost get a mirroring of the fixtures. So you've kind of got those Rangers games not too far apart. In terms of that one, because we know that the last one, it doesn't go our way, but to get that victory, to bring it back into it, that's got to really, really kick us on, hasn't it?
Well, it's the archetypal 6-pointer, isn't it? And if it had gone the other way, we would never have caught them. Simple as that. So, yeah, it was a monumental result. It was I can remember the stadium lifted. It was just remarkable that day. And I was obviously where I was. I'm right behind Lambo. I can see it going all the way in, even in his form that he was in, and he wasn't getting anywhere near it. And yeah, I see that photograph there with. Yeah, we just knew that was probably one of the gaps that we couldn't afford to give Rangers at that certain time. And it was, how many years was it? It was a long time since we won a New Year's Day game, I believe.
Oh, it was massive. It's a huge victory. It's again a brilliant all-round performance. You bear in mind that game as well. There's a couple of good Gorham saves as well, and that game as well. There's a couple of good saves. And Celtic, but that's unstoppable. It's a thunderbolt. You can hear that. I can hear the noise getting in off the bar. Brilliant. Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, that kicks us on. That really rejuvenates our season. But then also as well, we've got to remember the amount of times we play Rangers, we play them a wee bit, more often than you normally, because we get put out with a semi-final in Scottish Cup by them as well, and before we came on, we mentioned that this season's all about stopping the 10, right? All the hard, you would have taken that and not cared about any of the cups, but when you think about it, a season with so much on the line, it could have potentially been a treble, which is mental to think about as well. Mental.
Yeah, the cup game seemed to come around really quickly, the semi-final, if I remember. And I don't think we played that badly in that game. I think Coisty got one, didn't he?
Yeah.
He wasn't bad, was he?
Chappy. Nah, cheeky chappy. I'm having none of that. I'm not an Ali fan. Always be that guy. Always scored against my team. No having it.
But you have to. Did they win the Scottish Cup that year?
They did, didn't they? Aye, they did. Aye,
Yeah, I think so.
did they?
Did
Oh,
they?
wait a minute. Oh, you've got me thinking now because Hearts won a Scottish Cup in the 90s, didn't they? Oh,
Well, I'll do a
no,
Google search here,
I
lads.
think Rangers won. I really don't care, but I think they did. I think they did. Cast that out of my memory.
What year are we saying?
90. Oh, it would have been in 97, 98. So technically,
Are you sure Hearts didn't win it?
I think
sure.
Hearts won it. I think Hearts won it. Hearts beat them 2-1. Yes! Yes!
Yeah.
There we go. See, I pictured Hearts there. That's right. They didn't have the Strongbow top then. There we go. God, they got nothing. Fuck them.
They got nothing.
Colin Cameron. Oh, wow. What a player, eh?
Double sickness. There you go. Double sickness.
Oh, dear.
That's beautiful. We move on. But as we get into the thick end of the season, right at the end, I felt from watching that season, it was a roller coaster of emotions. And it sounds silly to say, it almost has felt nobody was gripping it. Nobody was, it's almost, obviously we did want to win it, but it felt like nobody wants to win this because the amount of opportunities, you drop points, lose a game, draw, things like that. Both teams, and that was, we were maybe struggling with the pressure of catching, but I think Rangers were crumbling with the pressure, the expectancy, as we know further down the line with our own Field 10 venture. But yeah, we get into April, as we say, and there's an absolute massive result that comes out. Tail end is, of course, Kelly beat Rangers out of nowhere at the tail end of sort of April, and it really just blows things open. We're calling on with 1 point, and of course we know we talk about Mirren, we get them Fairman, and we can do it. Am I right in saying, from what I've heard, that you were like, job's good, we're not going to lose to them Fairman, it's done?
No, we weren't like that at all.
No?
No, we didn't feel, we obviously knew if we beat Dunfermline it was done, but I think we'd had a couple of draws prior to that. I remember one game at home we'd drawn 0-0. I'm not sure who it was against, and that was, to us, was quite a poor result. And then when the Rangers beat us at Ibrox, I think that hit us a little bit, and I think at that point the press then started going against us a little bit.
I am shocked.
I think the nerves kicked in a little bit against Dunfermline, and I think we probably should have been out of sight before they scored their late goal. We had a couple of good chances. I think Ian Westwater was the goalkeeper, and he made a couple of good saves. But yeah, I know,
isn't it, for us?
Yeah, I know that we were desperate to party that night, and I know the supporters were. And I think I can remember the goal. You go back to Wim Jansen and the type of manager he was. That was the only time I can remember him really having not a pop at me, but just telling me to get my back four out. And he'd said it at half time as well, because he felt we dropped a little bit deep. It was almost as if we thought, right, we're 1-0, we're going to cling, and then we might get another one. But yeah, it was the wrong thing to do, and it wasn't really the Celtic way that we were used to. Anyway, Celtic's always been a very aggressive football team, so we probably in that moment sunk a little bit deep. That's where the goal came from, and God, we were hurting just as much as the supporters were not to be able to celebrate.
It's funny, and as Jay says there, I recall this when you watch the game back, you watch the footage, as you're saying, he's getting all this, get them out, and even you're sort of trying to wave them out, because I think it's about the halfway line, it's a big deep free kick, and it's a big open header over the top end. Yeah, as you say, I think when you watch that goal come back, you see we're pretty much camped out in our own box, so it's a big overload there. It's one of those ones, but as we say, the next game is all that matters, because we go into it with 2 points clear at the top, and of course, would I be right in saying, is this right or wrong, or is this just urban legend, that you guys before that St Johnstone game had a bit of a night out?
Why you know it's true. That's what you're
I'm
asking.
just trying to get in the mindset. I know I'm asking, but because
Yeah.
I sometimes you hear these things like, come on, oh, what shite. Like, nobody's going out with that one. Like,
I think we had there was a Chinese place that we used to go to. I can't remember exactly what the name was, but we decided, I think it was on the Tuesday. We knew we had Wednesday off, and we just felt as if we had to relieve a little bit of the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we went and sat round a massive table all together, big round table, had a Chinese, had a few, and then went home, had the day off, and came in Thursday ready to go for the game. You know, that weekend. I think it was something we needed to do that night. And because I think we always could feel when the tension was building up in us as a group. And that was usually our resolution to it.
You know, I think that is fantastic, though. You know, and it goes to show the character of the squad and the togetherness that, you know, let's be totally honest, see if it was this current climate and guys were going out, even if it was just for a dinner, you know, in the run up to a massive game like that, they'd get hung, drawn, and quartered. But no, of course, as we well know, we're at Celtic Park, and again, coming back to the theme, it mirrors. We talk about Henrik Larsson, you know, kickstarting our season with a diving header. This game, he relieves the tension with a brilliant finish. And of course, there's a couple of chances in that game. I think we get a couple of wee scares, if my mind serves me correct. And then the man that we spoke about earlier on, much maligned, Harold Bratback, converts it. It's 2-0. It's done. It's dusted. It's all over. What was the atmosphere like on that day in the stadium? I was watching on TV, but what was it like in there in terms of just the atmosphere?
It was terrifying, if I'm honest, because clearly we knew what was at stake. It was even the thought of, they talked about the helicopter being somewhere with the trophy and it was going to go to one place or the other. You're right, we had a couple of scares. I think it was George O'Boyle. I think there was a ball whipped over and I just got the faintest touch on it on my fingertips. I probably looked as though I was flapping, because I used to flap now and then at crosses. I got the faintest touch, and as a result of that, it hit the top of his head instead of him actually heading the ball in the back. Then I remember Lee Jenkinson curling a free kick in, and it bounced, and I managed to put, and then almost knocked myself out on the post. You know, I had a couple of moments in that game. I remember going in at half time and just wanting to put the towel over my head. It was really hot day, hot atmosphere, put the towel over my head and not wanting to listen to anything, just knowing that my focus had to be spot on second half. And the one thing I watched, Steve, is quite a lot. There's a video of the game done that day where there's no commentary. It's just the camera going around and watching the supporters, and then it's almost from ground level. It's a brilliant video. I don't know if you've ever seen it, and it kind of, whenever I watch it, it brings the nerves back. And I reckon for about 10 years, I still used to watch that thinking, I hope they don't score. I hope they don't score.
Were you aware? I know you've just got to focus on the game in hand, but as we well know, Rangers were winning. I think they were winning quite comfortably during that. Were you aware? Did any of that feed in? Where are Rangers do, or was it just eyes on the prize?
No, you knew. I had quite a close relationship with that top end, really. You know, obviously the other end at the time was a temporary stand. So there was always, you could always hear what was going on, and there was stuff coming through. I once we'd scored the second goal, I knew it was done. I could see St Johnstone finding anything from their sort of reserves to try and peg us back, and I can still see as the referee now down in the far corner blowing the whistle with the ball in his hands.
Absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, as we all know, there it is. There they are. There you are. Yeah, extremely high hat on, I must say. Enjoying that there. But one thing I wanted, not to sour the mood, but as we well know, during this season, the run up to that final game, there was question marks about Wim and where he was going to stay on. I don't think he necessarily saw eye to eye with Fergus and maybe Jock Brown. And I believe Murdo tells a story that on the pitch, he says to him, you know, it's not a bad way to finish my time up here. Were you guys aware, other than rumours, had he confirmed to you that he wasn't going to be there after that game at all?
No, we knew the rumours and we'd heard about them. I can remember we went to Estoril. I think we went to play Lisbon in Portugal, and they flew us out a couple of days after. So we didn't really get a lot of time to celebrate in Glasgow. They got straight on a plane to Portugal, and we knew what was happening. And I remember 4 or 5 of us being in a lift, and Boydie and Lambo were sort of main orchestras, and I think we put a letter into the board about Wim's situation, that we weren't happy. I think we even thought about, which is kind of not a good thing, we thought about not playing against Lisbon that night because we felt so strongly about it. But instead, we went and had that night before the game. We were all in the room together, and Wim stood up and he explained that he was leaving. You know, and he I remember him just saying, "Let's just for one last time, let's stand up for the champions." And you know, it's a really tight moment. It was quite an emotional moment, and that's what we did. And that was for Wim. We knew at that point he obviously had made up his own mind, even though he kind of been, we think he'd been pushed into a corner a little bit. And then we went out, got drunk, went out and played against Lisbon the next day. Played pretty well, to be honest. Not sure it was 1-1 or 1-0. No one will remember that bloody scoreline, but I remember Stubbsy. I think he scored, and then we all did the duck walk along the pitch, and everyone was looking and going, "What are these lot on about?" We just won the title. We just stopped 10. We just lost our manager, and they wanted us to play a game in Lisbon at the time. But we represented the club really, really well in the game.
Absolutely mental way to sort of end up a season, isn't it? You know, the high and then your manager, and as you say, the uncertainty and the question marks. But I suppose in some way it's a great way for him to go out as well. You know, legacy's immortalised. It's never, I think everybody in that team is immortalised, but you don't then have the risk of losing it the next season. It wouldn't have mattered because it was always stopping the 10, but it's perfect, isn't it? You're a one and done, 100% record. You can't argue with that. And then he goes off and does his own thing. But after all the highs of stopping the 10, massive, double your first season, getting asked, you know, coming for the call, the Bradford reserves, can you handle it? To that must be absolutely mind-blowing. Was there new contracts for everybody off the back of that?
Well, to be honest, I think I got a new contract after about 3 or 4 months. I'd had some kind of appearance thing put into my contract. So I had one then, and then I had another clause saying that if we won the title, they obviously didn't think it was going to happen, did they? If we won the title, it was due another contract. I think I had 3 new contracts in the space of 12 months. But it wasn't, you know, the money helps you later in life and it helps you live, but that's not what stays with you. It's everything that we've talked about this evening stays with you. It's the fact that
it's the legacy, isn't it? It's the being part of it.
Absolutely, Paddy. It is legacy. It's the joy of all those moments that you can recollect. You know, I've got my shirts on the wall at home. My medals are there. They're the proudest moment of it. So you take everything out of it. That's what you're left with.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long with other side things, but just to sort of go through, because you mentioned some of the players that you've been around, we'll touch on that. What I found interesting when I was having a wee look back is you then had 4 different managers in as many seasons, you know, because we then transition on, we get Dr. Joseph, then you were there for the Barnsdale Gleish experiment, you know, so there's a lot of change going on. Then, of course, Martin O'Neill, who's currently coming back in a temporary status there now. What was the sort of, from after that high there, obviously we know you've won other, you know, cups and leagues with Celtic. Was that a one-off in terms of the managers, the personnel? Was that for you? Was that your Celtic team, if that makes sense? Is that when you felt most at home at Celtic, or, you know, did it change?
Yeah. As far as the group goes, you know, even the staff behind the scenes, I've spoken about them this evening. You know, incredible group. You know, we had people that used to come and give us our breakfast every morning. They're just it was an amazing 12 months, especially with the outcome. Personally, ended up at the World Cup, as we've said, so that was even more amazing as well to finish. But I think that the thing I then look back to, I remember Dr. Joe being appointed. We didn't know who was going to be appointed, and we were in the dressing room. And I was sat there hoping, and we were waiting for the next manager, hoping that Wim walked through the door. I was so wanted him to. Now, Dr. Joe walked in, and nicest guy. I wish we'd have won something for him that year, because he came in with so much respect for the group. He was such a forward-thinking manager. We loved him, but we didn't give him probably what he deserved that year, which is a shame. Then, like you said, John and Kenny didn't quite work. Although Kenny, I remember getting back in the team with them. We won the cup that year, and then Martin walks in the door.
Mental.
Listen, Dr. Joe, when he came in, obviously will always be remembered for one thing and one thing only, and that was bringing in Lubomir Moravchik, who, in my eyes, is probably one of the greatest Celtic footballers I've ever seen, other than obviously Henrik.
Yeah, Lubo was a remarkable player. And like you talk about experiences against players like that in training, he could duck left to right and hit the same ball with both feet. He was a fabulous addition to the team. And he then went obviously to play under Martin and have such a big influence, for a couple of years, and probably could have gone on a bit longer. If that, and I think Dr. Joe bought Stillian in, did he, or was that Barnsley? I can't remember. I thought
that was Barnes. That was a Barnes signing. One of the few good things he had done, actually. Just out of question, what was John Barnes like as a, because he's often very rarely spoken about, and I know that certainly like after he left Celtic, he had a bit of kind of sort of scorned ex-lover type of attitude, I think, towards it, because it was weird, the relationship between Dalglish and Barnes. Who was in charge? Who was really in charge there?
Gosh, I kind of, since when you go into coaching, your attitude changes towards some of the managers you have. And if I was gonna, I could be really critical. I think I have been in the past sometimes of what happened under John, but I think he was a poor appointment in respect of his experience to come into a club like that. You're talking, the four managers either side of him. Wim was a very experienced guy. Joseph, incredibly experienced. Kenny, when he then became the interim for that 6 months, knows the game. And then Martin. In between, you've got sandwiched John, it was too early for him. It was, and I think he'd say the same himself. And he's not a bad person or anything like that. But I just think he was way out of his depth.
Kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier, shouldering that expectation, isn't it? I think he maybe found it a bit hard to deal with that.
Yeah, and he'd been at a massive club, Liverpool, and he'd been at Newcastle, but there's a different kind of pressure as we've spoken about. I think the when I realised who was in charge was, I'll tell it very briefly. We were playing Ayr United away in a cup match, and I think it was 0-0 at half time or something like that, and we were playing against the wind. It was a horrible night, and John just kept telling me to play out from the back, and he wanted this pure football stuff, and I'm sort of sitting there going, it's the windiest night in the world. We've got Viduka and we've got Larson, right? And Kenny came up to me and he goes, Gould, he said, when you get the ball, launch it up to the big man. He said, get it up to him as quickly as you possibly can. They will not deal with Viduka. I think we ran out 4-0 winners in the end, purely because we went route one. That was probably that. That experience of Kenny, and he kind of cut across John on that. It was a very quiet moment, and I've probably never said it, since. But I think, and then when Kenny came in, he steadied that ship for a period of time, and won a trophy. So I feel sorry for John in respect to the position he was put in. It was too early for someone of his limited experience of management.
Yeah. Well, Martin's obviously come in just now, and that's exactly what I said. People were saying about Martin O'Neill coming in at 73 years old, and he's came in exactly to do that, to steady the ship. Now, it doesn't matter what age he is. Age is a number. Martin O'Neill's come in there. He's a club icon, a club legend in my eyes, and the fans have bought into this. Obviously, there's a lot of disrepute just now around the board and what's happening kind of around about the club, but bringing in somebody like Martin is a masterstroke. And you obviously know, like we've spoken to players before, obviously guys like Didier Gatton, and we've spoken to John Hartson and whatever, but Martin's style of management is more personal to each player, isn't it? It wasn't really over management. He wasn't telling you how to play, but more so just kind of telling you to do what you're good at. Am I right in saying that? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And don't forget, I think he dropped me after 13 unbeaten games in the league that season. So
wow.
I can have a gripe with him, but no, he was. He of an era. He was your man manager. He was the sort of person that you wanted to go out and play for. He had 6 or, and he still has. He's got 6 or 7 different personalities that you see, and you can see him all in the space of 10 minutes. It's the way he handles the media. It's the way he handles his players. It's the way he walks down a corridor and you can tell he's in a bad mood, so you don't bother talking to him. A big black cloud over him. But what I think the biggest thing that I've taken from Martin, in this spell, is that people have mentioned. We've mentioned it tonight. We've mentioned the word legacy.
Yes.
He doesn't care about his personal legacy. All he cared about, and it was right from the start when he joined the club, was how could he do the best he possibly can for that football club. And for someone like Dermot to pick the telephone up and say, Martin, as you say, at the age of 73, where you could, we managed to get called dinosaurs. Well, he's not a dinosaur. He's a manager of his time, and elements of that kind of management still exist today. That hasn't changed. The motivation around players, how you put a team together at a certain point or a certain moment in the game. He's got young guys alongside him. He's got Sean, who knows the game. Fozzie's done, an education.
Oh, Fozzie, love him.
Yeah, so there'll be a backroom staff that are helping him with the, I doubt whether he even realised why Scout on the Huddle was in the last 10 years, Martin, and Instat and all the stuff that comes in around the what helps us now as coaches. But what never changes is whether you can get a player to go out and play for you and for themselves, and obviously the supporters. And the supporters know that that's what Martin's getting these players to do, is play for them, because that's all he's ever really cared about.
Yeah. Well, listen, before we finish up, we'll go through a Celtic team, but I've got loads of people. We've got about 230 odd people watching us live at the moment, and the comments they're all loving your chat. Very appreciative of you. There's a few folk want to ask some questions. I'll try and quick fire through some of them. I think this one's quite interesting. He's asked that a couple of times. It's one of our also from far afield. It's one of our subscribers, Jay, who's out in Barry. He asks about a specific result. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's one that's completely went over my head, but maybe I'll bring it in here. And he asks, the Tyrrell Invershoek game, did that bring us together? Was that a sort of landmark result for the team there early on in that season?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I said about the Liverpool game as well. I think we went to Tyrrell, and did we get beat? We might have got beat 2-1, but we showed an amazing amount of resilience away at Innsbruck. It was probably my first game where I had an impact and positively helped the team. But then the home fixture was the maddest game I've ever played in. Okay, I came off and had to. I knew we'd won. I wasn't quite sure how, and I came off. And I remember talking to Morten Vigos and going, "What was the score, mate? I've got no idea what the score was." It was. And I can remember us going in the dressing room, and you're in the next stage of a European competition, huge. So yeah, it was massive. You got it right.
There's another few things in here as well, Jonathan. We're just going to click on a few. Like somebody asking there, who was the funniest guy in the dressing room?
There were 2 for me. There was Tommy Johnson.
Class,
who obviously, has clinched a couple of titles for us. And there was Darren Jackson. Because Darren...
That's interesting. Darren Jackson never struck me as a funny man.
I
can see Tommy Johnson.
Hysterical guy. Really funny. Very dry. But I think that was something else. I think he had a rather bad brain injury that year, and we all had to deal with that as a player and an operation. And and again, that's when teams come together. It's around things like that. There's a human side to football teams, believe it or not. And Darren was that brilliant.
One of them. Who was the worst dresser? Can you remember back to the kind of things? We'll go to doing that. Have a couple.
Yeah, I was crap, to be honest. Yeah, it was useless. Yeah, I always have.
There's a couple here I'm intrigued to know, because some people have better. Studs wants to know, who was the Dunfermline player that chipped you in league title at East End Park? Apparently it's got a 40-yarder. I don't recall this. Do you?
No, that's the header he's talking about.
Oh, the header. There we go.
Yeah, it probably looked
It looks like because we're talking. I'm thinking, I don't remember a chip. I remember a big cross. And there you go. We've already addressed that.
No.
But, so, and Punch wants to know
about Flag Day, is he? Because we got Dunfermline the next season, I think, at home.
He might be talking about another game.
Yeah, but 5-1 that was. Yeah.
I probably this is you says we spoke about Martin O'Neill there, and obviously, unfortunately, for whatever reason, he phased you out. But you played in this game, you played in that demolition 6-2 job, and that's got to be absolutely madness. Is that for you? Is that the best one against Rangers, or is it the sort of New Year one of the
New Year's up there because of the ramifications of that, but also the 6-2. And since Martin's gone back in the last few weeks, he's obviously been talking about this. That was quite incredible, and just purely because you could feel the whole stadium bounce. And it was just a great day. When the 6th one went in, I remember running around like a lunatic. I don't think I behaved that well when Barry got sent off throwing the ball at me and stuff. But it was all part and parcel of the game at the time. And the fourth goal from was it the fourth goal from Henrique? I kind of claimed the assist because I actually caught a cross and then launched it as far as I could. And Sutty had a bit of skill, only a little bit of skill. It's quite easy for him to bring that one down. And then obviously Henrique had an easy job of just dinking it with the outside of his foot. So kind of that one.
There's a double barrel question in here as well, Jonathan. Yes. What was your highest point and your lowest point in your Celtic career?
Highest point was that title day.
Yeah.
Lowest point was probably 2 or 3 days after leaving the club. When it sinks in. And I can remember when it happened. We actually had a winter break. I was on the golf course with my son Matt, and the phone went, and Martin told me there was another club in for me and to play, and I felt as if I needed to go and play. And then you kind of 3 or 4 days later, you go, why have I left? And my son was crying, all that sort of stuff. And I'd love to go back one day. I'd love to. But
that kind of puts us onto this one as well. Then Jonathan, he's asked a question there. Will you always be a Celtic fan after playing for us? It's kind of self-explanatory, isn't it?
Yeah, never goes away. I'll give you an example of that. I suppose I've got a little house down in a place called Hawke's Bay, near just outside where I live in New Zealand, and all my cats, my hats are all Celtic hats. Walk around the beach. No one's probably got. There's nobody on this beach, but that's why I'm a huge Celtic supporter, and my family are now as well.
So, in terms of to bring it home, I want to do to finish this up. Want your best Celtic 11 you played with now? You're in goals, right? You have to be in goals, whether you like it or not. You're in goals, right? You're the goalkeeper. And we'll make you the captain, right?
I can't play up front with Henke then, no.
And this will play into one of the questions. So one of the people's asking, right, is who's the best player that you played with? But I'm going to be presumptuous here. Who's not named Henrik Larsson, right? Because so give me your best. With you in goals. Who's your outfielder players? Your pick of the guys that you played with Celtic. If you were building a team to play tomorrow, who would it be?
That is so hard. I don't know how I'd fit them all in, to be honest.
Who would you want right in front of you?
Yeah, okay, in front of me, I'm going to go for Big Mark Reaper and Alan Stubbs. As much as they used to moan at me, I've got to have those two in front of me. Left back, I'd probably put Boydie on the left, right? Because I thought he was a steady Eddie and he never used to cause many problems. As much as I like Stefan, Boydie was probably my
less chance of getting sent off.
He was less mental, we'll say, yeah.
So, which means I can put Jackie Mack at right back.
Yeah.
I know he had a great career in all these other divisions, but I thought he was a fabulous right back going forward. Goodness me. Holding midfield players, God, I've missed out Johan Mialbi as well. Yeah, I've missed. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard because
you can have Johan as a sub if you want, right?
Sub centre back because probably because Stubbsy sort of come off a bit tired after 60 minutes or something like that. Midfield players, I'd probably have to go Lenny, Lambert, and Burley.
Oh, that's a good midfield. That's a good peak midfield. That.
Yeah. Not sure many, but I play sort of Burley in the sort of more advanced role with Lenny and Lambert doing all the dog stuff for him. Wide left. Hold on, I got four. What have I got? 4-3-3. I used to hate 4-3-3. Oh goodness me! I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll play Lubo on a sort of lopsided 4. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put him. He can go and do what he wants, Lubo. He can go and pop up left. Right. Okay. And then I'd probably have to go Sutton and Larson up front.
Yeah, and that goes without saying, doesn't it? I don't think you can actually look and say anyone else fits into that bill. They were just in their arena phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? Absolute icons of the game, and I don't think
I've underdone a lot of great players. I had the
And who would your manager be in there then, Jonathan? Who's going to be the manager?
Yeah. I'd have to go Vim, but Martin. As much as he didn't always rate my goalkeeping, Martin was a fantastic manager at football club for us.
Wonderful.
He still is. He's doing a great job up there.
And just to bring that home, I just want to get a wee opinion off you, if you don't mind. We spoke about John Barnes and job's been too big and too early for him.
Yeah.
Martin's holding. He's at the helm now. He's holding up the fort.
Yeah.
It looks Wilfred Nancy is the name that's getting sort of on everybody's lips, and there's a lot of question marks come from the MLS. 4 seasons as a manager, he's shown his improvement. Have you any thoughts on him as a would-be candidate? As football and management and the way that the modern game, if you want to call that, works? Is that raft experience as essential, or is it a guy like Nancy? Do you think he could do something at Celtic?
There's a big difference between the MLS and the Scottish game. Okay, I think the fact he's been there 4 years says a lot for how he's thought of, and obviously some of the way he manages. I think if you look at where Ange came from, and obviously it's part of the world I'm from now, and the pathway that Ange had leading into his introduction, he won in Australia, he's gone to Japan, which is a fantastic league, then he comes into Celtic as part of his, and he'd also been an international manager. So, your pathways are quite important, I think, and your experience. Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think now and then we, as a Celtic club, we've gone for a little bit of an outlier. Ronnie Delia was probably a bit of an outlier at the time.
Absolutely, aye.
And he had 2 successful years. Whether the club thought they were capable of taking him on to, the next thing for us as a football club is Europe. We have got to somehow crack Europe again. The last man to do that is currently the manager of the football club. Okay, we flirted with it a few times. We've got our asses felt a couple of times in Europe, especially in the Champions League.
The Dortmund game.
And that's. I think that happens. I remember it happening to Manchester United when Ferguson took over. But we've somehow this club has got to show the evolution to get us to get at least be last 16 in the Champions League.
I think that comes to board level as well. We do need a lot of investment. We need somebody to back a manager as well.
Do you know what, guys? I'm not someone that sort of, you can tell. I always want to be able to walk in the door at a football club like Celtic, and I think when you look at how the game's gone and the amount of money it takes to run a football club now.
Yeah.
And we're not just a football club. I think we're a PLC, aren't we? My son's got shares in the club, not many, but he's got a few. And And I think that alone, they're run differently. I think because of the limitations of the game in Scotland in respect of, support and, we're a massive club. I think the investment, when you think of the players back to when I was lucky enough to play, and the amount of money that was being spent on players, even Rangers, I think it spent 12 million on the big Norwegian boy, and we were spending 6, 7s and 8s then. Kind of don't see it now.
No.
Now, if we're going to compete somewhere down the line, we're going to have a little crack at it. The problem is, if we're not successful, then we've got a big hole. And we don't want to go back to the days before Fergus was there and there was issues. Fergus McCann came in, saved the club. We don't want to go back to that. We want to be perennial winners of the league, winners of our cup, and being in Europe. We don't want to, it's a balancing line.
And I think we're talking about modernising, talking about investment, and that's all hand in hand. And I think to circle around on the idea of someone like Wilfred Nancy, we need that kind of modern input, because we still don't know the ins and outs of what's happening behind the scenes. And a lot of these, you'll be sure you're imagining as well, there's analytics and there's departments and everything's a lot of data driven, and there's a lot of football-minded folk in making decisions, where we still feel a wee bit, maybe not to the summer when you actually joined, where it's maybe one or two guys and they're picking, we'll sign name, and it's not really, it's kind of reactionary rather than long-term. I think we do need to modernise, but you're entirely right. The desire for European pushing on is huge.
Look, I'm at a club now that started last year, and it's backed by a guy called Bill Foley, who owns Bournemouth, right? And he owns 3 or 4 other clubs around the world. So he invested really heavily.
Let us know where you're at and what you're doing. I'm sure
I'm in New Zealand, and I work for a club called Auckland FC, right? So we're a franchise based in New Zealand that plays in the Australian A-League. So last year we were a startup, brand new, came into the league. We've got head of recruitment. We've got some good money behind us in respect of what the Black Knights group has. Our recruitment was massive, around the type of player we wanted. Steve Corica, the manager, came in, knew how, had already won leagues, right? The A-League with Sydney. So he knew what it takes to win this league. And that's the thing. You've got to make sure you've got people in the football club that know how to win. But the recruitment nowadays is crucial. But the buck always stops with the manager. So it's got to be the manager that's ultimately choosing that player. And within his remit, he's got his staff that support that. It has changed, but I maintain the manager's got to at the top of everything. And Ferguson said it at Man United. You have to control the football club if you're the football aspect of the club if you're the manager. And that allows you to sort of die on your own sword if that's the case. But that's how I
see how things pan out.
Listen, Auckland FC have now got another 240 odd followers, mate, because we'll be supporting you from now on. That's it. You're one of our own.
Anyway, right? We won the league first year. So
excellent. There we go.
Get a man for Bournemouth on the board. Do you want to put a wee hand? We'll put a wee hand on the Celtic. I
think the club's got amazing supporters, and like I said, it's just got to be done properly, but you've got to do it carefully as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see how these things pan out. There's an AGM coming up. Hopefully there's a new manager coming up. We'll get a game, 8 o'clock, random 8 o'clock on Saturday at the weekend. Back in action. As it stands, it's going to be Martin O'Neill, and I'm sure you'll keep an eye on that. But listen, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out. It must be, about 12 o'clock now? So we've kept you for about an hour and a half now.
Yeah, it's 12:30. We're going to have a look. I've got a day off, so I'm going to go down the beach.
Go for a swim or something in the sea.
I know, I'm looking outside. It's fucking like -2 or something now.
And Jonathan, I don't know if you know, but I'm in the middle of the North Sea at the minute. I work on the rigs. I'm sitting on an oil rig. It's probably about -10 outside, mate. It's absolutely freezing.
You're sitting there looking all sun-kissed. He's looking miserable. I'm freezing. But listen, everybody has loved the comments tonight. We've had about 260 at our peak there watching live. Listen, thank you very much for taking the time out, Jonathan. It really does mean a lot to us for coming on. And as I say, it's always great to hear from guys like yourself, other end of the world, guys that mean so much to this club, and we don't get to hear from that often. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your morning to sit and chat to us two idiots. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, that's brilliant. And hail to all the guys that are out there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, if you liked that, get your comments down below. We'll always, reply to them as we can. More importantly, hit the subscribe. Cost you nothing. You'll get more content like this. All the stuff we do is 100% free. Get a wee thumbs up, share it, and get more people on this here. Go and share it. Get them, let them know what Johnny's been saying. Spread the word. Take care of yourselves. Until the next time, Paddy, you tell them for the middle of the North Sea, brother. I'm Jibber.
As always, guys, thanks very much, and hail, hail.
See you later. Bye-bye.